In my last video, I went over a new software that I was using called Vista Sculpt, and I demonstrated how I could use that software to take a picture, whether it was a picture generated by AI, a picture that I took with my camera or got off Facebook, or a picture that was generated by the software itself. It has its own AI model. And I discussed how I could take that picture, export it as a 3D model, an STL file, and I said in that video that what I would do in my next video is explain how I take those exported models and manipulate those in Vectric software, both Aspire and vCarve Pro, to turn into wood carving models. And that's what I'm going to do in this video. If you stick around for the next few minutes or so, we'll go through the process of taking the models that I exported from this Vista Sculpt model right in here, this Vista Sculpt software. And I'll start with this Rhino that I did, and we'll go from there, and I'll go through the process of how I can carve those in wood. If you didn't see that video, you can look up in the corner. It'll be either in this corner or that corner. I can never remember which one. And watch that video before you come here. Now, you don't really need to watch that video because you can use the process I'm going to show you with any STL. But the Vista Sculpt software is what allowed me to get the STLs to start this process. With that, let's get started into the Vectric software. Okay, here we are in the Vectric software. I'm going to start out with the one that most people would have, which is vCarve or vCarve Pro. So I've got a file open here. I'll create a new file, and I'm going to make my picture about 10 by 10 or so. I'm going to make this 12 inches by 12 inches. And let's just make this at what most people have with wood, so 0.75. I will tell you this, the thicker the carve, the more impressive it will be and the deeper. So let me go ahead and make this 1 inch and just do that. Hit OK. Everything else is set up. Machine surface works fine. I'm not going to change any of the material settings or any of that. And now I've got my project open. So the first thing I need to do is to import the STL that I made in the Vista Sculpt software and I exported to a file. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to go to that file. And in this one, I exported the Rhino with a frame that was actually made in Vista Sculpt software. I went through there and explained how we can do that. I didn't go into detail, but that's kind of one of the keys is coming out of Vista Sculpt without needing to do a lot of manipulation of the image because of the limitations with Vectric vCarve. You can only have one STL open at a time in Vectric vCarve, and so that's a limitation. And the STL that we're going to have open is the one that we just made. So we're going to go in here, and I'm going to open up that file, and you can see I have that file called Rhino Head with frame right here. That's an STL file. I'll open that up. And when I open that in, you see it comes with the frame. It's looking up. I'm going to scale millimeters to inches because the Vista Sculpt at this time exports everything in millimeters. I want to fit it on my project, and you can see it came in at like 42 inches. So I'm going to make this 10 inches, and I'm going to leave the lock XYZ ratio on so that everything comes in the way I want it. And I thought I put 10, but I must have hit the 9. So that's 10 inches, and you know that it scaled it down to 0.75, 0.7456 inches. Hit apply. When I hit apply, I'm going to center the model inside of the wood, and that's what this represents. I'm using my right cursor and moving it around, and you can see the side level of the wood and how it fits right in the wood there. And then I'm going to position and import the model, and I'm going to twiddle this down, as they call in Vectric speak. And I'm going to take this all the way down to the bottom. What I'm looking for is I want to make sure this is all bright blue. If it's a shade of gray, let me show you real quickly. So when it first came in, can you see how this part is gray? So I need to come in here and take this and move it down so that everything you see will be carving, because there's the plane right there. And if I had it down lower, then those would be below the carving plane. So now that I have that all set up, I can hit import. And now that's imported, and I'm going to come over here and hit top because it's easier. And that's the 3D view. That's what my model is looking like right now. It's that quick and that simple. Now, you have limited modeling tools. Really, you have not very many at all. You've got one where you can put an outline around the model. one that you can do a cross section, one that you could slice the model up individual components. We're not going to talk about that if you needed to. One where you could put a zero plane in there, or a smoothing filter, I mean. This is for smoothing, and this one here tells you the height, and you can scale the height of it. So right now, let's click on that. And it's telling me the height of my model is 0.7448 inches. And if I wanted to scale that up or down, I could do that. Hit OK. The next thing is, this is add a plane or component with zero height. This is a zero plane, and that's only done when you're doing bowls and dishes and so forth. So now that we've got the model imported into Vectric vCarve, it's as simple as setting up the toolpaths. You can scale the height. If I wanted to scale the height up, let's slide this bar up and you'll see. You see how it got bigger? And now it's up to 1.99 inches. I can scale it. Let's say my wood is 1 inch, so I'm going to scale it to, let's scale it to just below 1 inch. 0.98 inches is right below 1 inch. So that's going to give me a deeper carving. Hit OK. And now that I have that, the next step is to go ahead and set up the carving paths, or the tools to carve this thing. And so the first thing I want to do is I want to check to make sure where the model is. And so I want to make sure there's a little bit of wood below the model. And right now it says it has 0.0169. But let me make it just a little smaller. I think I made it a little too big. And so I can change that a couple ways. I can go back over here to the scale tool here, or I can come over here and hit set to 0.8. Since my wood is 1 inch 1.0, I want 0.2 left over of meat. So I'm going to hit apply there. I'm going to come back over here, and I'm going to put down here that I want 0. Hit close. That's why you hear that doing that. I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to hit 0.02, very little on the top, and that gives me 0.18. So I like that. I'm going to hit OK. And now I can go ahead and set the toolpaths. So I'm going to come up here and click on toolpaths, open that up. And the first thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to set a roughing toolpath. So I hit the roughing toolpath, and I'm going to select a roughing bit from my tool database. So I have some tools set up that I typically use for roughing. I use this roughing bit right here, this golden boy, 1 inch. Select. Now that I've got the roughing bit, I'm going to go to the model boundary, which is this boundary right here, and I'm going to go out 0.25 inches so that my roughing bit has the ability to go past this, the diameter of the roughing bit. So it will remove the material from here. And then I'm going to leave this at 0.04. I'm going to do the 3D raster or the Z level. The quicker one is the Z level. It's up to your preference. I'm just going to go ahead and do the Z level. I'm not going to ramp any plunges. I'm going to hit calculate, and now it's calculating the roughing path. Hit close, and this is what it looks like after I rough it. So that's what that looks like. And now I'm going to go ahead and set up the finishing toolpath. So the next toolpath I set up is this finishing toolpath right here. And you can see I've pre-selected, because it remembers the last time I did a finishing toolpath. I've got a 1/4 inch tapered ball nose that I'm using. I've got a 1/8 inch tapered ball nose that I'm using. And I got a 1/16 inch tapered ball nose that I'm using. And that's because I want to get the detail right here in these crevices and mostly around the eyes. The eyes are the window to the world, they say. And so I like to get the eye details and some of these details. So that's why I went down to 1/16 inch. 1/8 inch may be fine. In fact, why don't I show you what it looks like without the 16th inch? I'm going to remove that right now. I'm going to do the model boundary again. I'm going to go ahead and do the boundary offset of the biggest tool I have, which is the 1/4 inch ball nose. So I'm going to do 0.25. And I'm going to keep all of this material. What I like to do is raster toolpath. So I'm going to go ahead, and I either like to go with the grain of the wood, or I like to go at a 45-degree angle. So in this one, I'm going to go at a 45-degree angle. 45. And now I've got everything there. I'm not going to use a vector because I'm not putting a vector around this picture as a boundary. I'm going to hit calculate. And there we go. We have our model all calculated. And remember, this is only going down to a 1/8 inch tapered ball nose. And then I'll add the 1/16 inch in so you can see the difference. But before I do that, I'm going to come over here for a second to the 2D view. I'm going to go ahead and grab the component, which would include all this vector, and I'm going to use this tool right over here under 3D modeling tools, and that is to create a vector boundary around the selected components. And this is the selected component in here. So by doing that, now I've created a square outline vector, and that will allow me to cut this picture completely out. So I'm going to grab that vector right there, and I'm going to put that on a layer, move to a new layer, and I'm going to call that cutout. And let me make that a blue. How about that? Hit OK. So now I have that blue layer. Now I'm going to come up here to this profile toolpath. I'm going to go all the way through the material. When I do that, I like to hit Z. And then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to select a bit. I'm going to come down to my CIC bits. I'm going to grab this finishing bit, which is right here, download finishing bit, and hit select right there. And now that I've got that, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do a separate last pass. And the way I do that, I'm going to put 0.02. That will allow it to make 3 passes going down, and then the last pass will come in just 0.02 inches, and that will help remove any dwell marks or anything in there. Normally, I'm not going to do that in this because I want to be able to show you the results. Normally, I'll put tabs in here if I'm not using double-sided tape or the blue tape and CA glue, but I'm not going to do that at this time, but I would normally do that. I will normally put a ramp in there of twice the distance of the diameter of the bit, which is a 0.25 bit. So this is 0.5, and I don't need to project it on the toolpath. And I'm going to go ahead and associate that with my cutout vector. Hit close. And now I'm going to say cutout here. And I'm going to hit calculate and hit close. And then I'm going to go back over to the 3D view. And now let's preview what that's going to look like. We already did the roughing bit, so now we don't need to do that. We're just going to preview the rest of the visible bits. So we're going to preview visible, and that will do everything that I have a check mark in. Preview visible. Now we're going through and doing the 1/8 inch ball nose, tapered ball nose. And we will take that away, delete it by double clicking on it, and that's what your carving should look like. Now, if you like that, then let's take a look at what the carving time is estimated to be on my machine. I'll click on all those, and then I'm going to come over here to the summary of tools, and that's going to take about 3 hours on my machine, going with the 1/8 inch tapered ball nose. Now, let's undo that for just a second. And one thing I want to check out is it didn't look like I was doing a 45-degree raster when I was using the finish path. If you saw it, it started in the center and went going around and around. So I'm going to come over here and see what happened. And we've got these two tool paths. And notice it's got an offset toolpath, and I wanted a raster, and I said 45 degrees. So what happened, I believe, is when I went and removed that 1/16 inch tapered ball nose, it then took it off the raster. So make sure you make changes up here that you're doing what you want. So I'm going to add the 1/16 inch ball nose so you can see the difference. The Skinny Jenny from Cadence Manufacturing. And I'm going to come in here, I'm going to recalculate it, but this time I'm going to use a raster with a 45 degree. And I'm going to hit calculate. Now, one thing I want to warn you about, depending on the strength of your computer and how fast it operates. It can take quite a while to get this done. Don't get impatient. Be looking at the blue bar down at the bottom of the screen and see if it's still working. And so now mine is just finished. Now that I know it's all calculated, I'm going to hit close. And then I didn't have to recalculate this because that was already done. And so now we're going to go through and I'm going to reset the preview so we can start fresh. All right. And then I'm going to come down here I'm going to turn off the 16th inch ball nose just so you can see we can get to the point where we were before. Here, preview the visible. So now what we're doing is we're doing the first finishing pass, and apparently it didn't accept the 45 degree. It's using a 0 degree, which is what it defaults to. So now it's doing the 1/8 inch tapered ball nose. All right, it just finished the 1/8 inch tapered ball nose, and that's what it's going to look like. Now let me show you what it looks like by adding the 16th inch tapered ball nose. I'm going to click on that toolpath over here, and we're just going to do that one. Preview visible. So now what you see is it's getting a little more detail, and it's deeper, and to me that looks much better. But then you have to decide, for you, do you have the patience to let your machine do that carving? Because that's going to add significant time to the carving. I'll show you the difference. All right, let's go over here let me just cut it out so you can see what it looks like. Double click and delete the excess material. So that's what it looks like with the 16th inch. You can see it's much deeper, much more pronounced. And I'm going to go ahead and hit close on that. And then I'm going to come over here, and you can see that it went from 3 hours. That last toolpath added another 2 hours and 10 minutes or so. It could be more on your actual machine, but it's a total of 3 hours and like 45 minutes to 5 hours and 21 minutes. So the question is that extra couple hours worth the detail? And if you think so, then that's what you want to do. And that's how you can use Vectric to go ahead and carve out something that you create in a Vista Sculpt. In the example we just discussed, coming from Vista Sculpt, I had the frame around it, so it made it very easy for me to take that Rhino picture and turn it into something that I could carve. The limitations in vCarve are that you can only have one STL. So my recommendation is that if you are going to import something from Vista Sculpt, you want to make sure that it has as much detail in it as you want, or if you want to use it, this is in vCarve. Otherwise, it's going to be just like any other component that you have in your clip art library, except that you can only use one. To this point in the video, I've showed you how you can take an output from Vista Sculpt with a frame around it and use it very easily in vCarve. I want to go to the next step, and I want to show you how I can take an individual component that I might export versus something composed in a frame. Up to this point in the video, I hope you've learned something new about how you could take an output directly from Vista Sculpt, especially with a frame around it, and easily carve something in a piece of wood or Corian or something else with vCarve Pro or vCarve without much complication. If you're liking what you're seeing, please take a minute to subscribe or give me a like, a comment, a share. Let me know that you like what's going on. And if you want to know how to use other types of models or other outputs from Vista Sculpt, then stick around and I'm going to show you that next. I'm going to show you how I could take a model out of Vista Sculpt where I've removed the background and turned that into a nice carving. And if you want to know more about how you could even make more complex models using Aspire, that'll be in my next video. With that, let's go into the next section. I took the background away from that Rhino, and now it can be a Rhino like any other clip art, except you can only have one of them. And if I import the Rhino by itself, it looks like this. I'll bring it in, Rhino no background. I'm going to open that up. I'm going to do the import process that I did before. I'm going to scale millimeter to inches. And let's take this down here. Let's take it to like, I want to say 5 inches. And I'm going to hit apply. I'm going to center the model. I'm going to position and import it. I'm going to take it all the way down to the bottom, and I'm going to import. So now I have this model that I can do things with, but I'm very limited in Vectric vCarve, but I'm unlimited in Aspire. That's why I tend to go to Aspire. As mentioned previously, the ability to use multiple STLs in Vectric is limited, but you can still do quite a bit. And we're going to show, and let me show you one more item that I did with this actual rhinoceros that I took the background out of, and I'll show you a carving that I made using it. Let's go through that process right now. So now that we have this imported, we can treat it like any other STL or component. And what I want to do is I'm going to change the size of this sheet. I have a, let me bring it in. I have a small piece of walnut that I want to carve this rhinoceros in. So this is what it looks like before I surfaced it. It's got a little bit of a bow here. I'm going to go ahead and surface this, and I'll show you how I carve in this piece. So this piece is about 5.5, 6 inches by a little over 10.5 inches. So I'm going to change the size of this sheet to represent that. So we come in here to the sheet. I'm going to edit here. And if I remember right, it's about 5.75. And if not, I'll change it later off screen just before I cut it by 10.75 inches. It's a little over 1 inch thick. I think it's 1.02 inches thick. We'll make it that. I'm going to carve off the material surface. I'm going to go off the center datum point because I'm going to need to be able to line this design up in the center. And I'm going to hit OK. Yep. I kind of goofed that up. Let me change this again, edit it. I got those mixed around. So this is 10.75 in the X direction. And this is 5.75 in the Y direction. And now we've got the material sitting there. So now we've got this walnut material sitting here, and I'm going to show you how I can use this design. I need a little room, so I'm going to make this a little smaller by resizing it. And what I want to do is I'm going to resize it to say, keep everything, the XY ratio, everything linked up. I'm not going to auto scale to Z at this time. And I'm going to take this and make this about, let me call this, I want to call it right now, I'm going to make it 3.75 for now. And then I can change that later if I need to, hit apply. So that made that smaller in XY, but it did not change the Z level of it because I didn't auto scale it. And now if we turn it to the side, you can see the depth of this carving. And you can see that the horn is much deeper or thicker than the rest of it. Now let's go ahead and use the trick of trying to get as much depth of it as we can out here. So the first thing I want to do is I can't put another STL, but I can use all the clip art that's in the library that I want. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring in a dome and a dish, and I'm going to make that one that's a 45 inch, not 45 inch, 45 degree dish. I can bring that in by bringing it over here. And I'm going to take that now in the design mode, and I'm going to center that in this material by clicking here. And so now that's centered, and my other model, the model of the Rhino Head, is also centered. And I'll do that, I'll check that just to make sure. Let's take the dome away so it's not hiding it. And I'm going to take this, and I'm going to center it. And I could use the key F9, but I like to use those menus over there a lot of times. And so now we're going to bring back this dome and dish that we brought in there. And I want to take that dome and dish, and it comes in as a dome, and I'm going to turn that around, and I'm going to make it a dish. So I'm going to take this combine mode, and I'm going to go to subtract. And now it's a dish. And I want that dish to fit inside of this walnut slab. So I'm going to go ahead and resize that more like a decorative kind of dish. And I'm going to take, and let's say about like that, and like that. That's good. And then I want to resize this Rhino Head. And I'm going to bring that out in the dish. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to hold Shift. And enlarge the Rhino so it takes up more of the dish. And then I'm going to come and bring that and center that to make sure it's centered, but I might not worry about that as much. Okay, I centered it. That's not quite what I want there. So I'm going to actually take this Rhino and I'm going to move it slightly down. That's more like what I want to see. And if you are looking at this carving, what you can see right now is, if you look to the side, you see this shaded area here. Well, that is the modeling plane, and you can see that I have the ear sticking a little above, as well as the horn sticking above the bowl or the dish. And I want to put all of this in the dish. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to take and fade this Rhino so that it all fits into the dish. Well, before I do that, let's see what the total size is of the model right now. I come over here and I can see the current height of the model is 0.908. And so I've got plenty of room. I have 1 inch. So right now I'm okay. And we'll leave it at that for right now. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to take the Rhino and select the Rhino, double click. And then I'm going to use the fade feature. And I'm going to fade it so that this horn and this this area right here go down below. So I'm going to use the fade function, and I can do that by coming over in here, or I could have opened it up down here. Either way. So I've got this open right now. I'm going to select fade. And now that I select fade, I'm going to select set. And the area I'm going to want to fade is over here. And so I'm going to take from down in this area and come across. And that should get both of those areas. And then if I hit the fade, it immediately fades at 50%. But I want to take it just a little bit more because you can see that ear is sticking out just a little bit. And I'm going to fade it down just a little bit more until that ear disappears. You see how that ear disappeared? Hit close. And now what we have, if you're looking at it, is you can see that the Rhino is inside the dish. And the only problem that we have right now is that the Rhino, let me put it top so we're looking at it head on, is slightly sticking out of the dish. So we need to take care of that. And the way that we can do that, I need to shrink this down just a little bit. That's kind of the limitation with vCarve. If we were in Aspire, I could clip this part out. But because we're not in Aspire, I need to shrink this Rhino down just a little bit or grow the dish. So I'm going to go ahead and shrink that Rhino down just a little bit. For some reason, I'm having troubles grabbing that. Let's take this out of the way here. And now we'll double click the Rhino. And I'm going to shrink that down just a tiny bit, tiny bit. Let's turn the dish back on. And the Rhino now you can see fits completely inside of the dish. I'm going to make it just a little bigger. All right, so now the Rhino fits completely inside the dish. Hit design. And with that then, I'm going to go ahead and put a zero plane over the top of this simply because I'm going into a dish and it will make the carving cleaner where the dish goes in. So I'm going to select this at a plane and it says with zero covering model. So I'm going to do that. And now that'll make this carving cleaner. And now let's take a look real quickly at what that's going to look like when we carve it. So I'm going to go ahead and take a previous toolpath that I had and I'm going to do 3D roughing. I'm going to use this golden boy. And I'm going to want to get this whole thing carved out. And so I'm going to carve this whole material because I want it all to come together as a nice continuous model. So I'm going to go here to, now if I was doing this differently in a bigger piece, I might not do the material boundary, but I'm going to go material boundary. I'm going to go 0.25. That means it'll go just slightly outside the material. And we've got everything done here. I'm going to do Z level. Actually, I'll do a 3D raster. I'll do 45 degrees. And I'm going to do calculate. And hit close. Now, one thing I didn't do was make sure where this was going to be sitting inside the material. So I'm going to hit set first. And you see that I have gap below model 0, gap above model. Well, I want to have this not down there. So I need to redo this now. I'm going to go 0.02. And then I'm going to go ahead and come off the machine bed so that I can not worry about when I machine the top of this material off, I have some place to actually Z the material. Then I'm going to come over here, 0.02, have plenty of material below the model, hit OK. The model is 0.75 deep, and we're going to hit OK. And I'm going to hit yes. I should have done that before I set up the roughing path, so I'm going to hit OK there, hit OK here. And I'm going to come back over to the finishing pass now. And I'm going to set this up and make sure it's all set up with all the bits I want. Again, I'm going to go to the material boundary, 0.25, so I go past it, raster, 45 degrees, and I'm going to calculate those tool paths. And let's go ahead and preview what that looks like. Make sure everything's reset. So we're starting fresh. And we hit preview visible because all of these here. I don't need a cutout because I'm not going to cut this out. So I'm going to preview visible. All right, so there we are. We've got it modeled out. In reality, if I wanted to make this a little deeper, let's go back over here to close. If I wanted to make this a little more impressive with the Rhino, I could have taken the Rhino design and come over here. And I'm going to undo the, let me move that down here. I'm going to take the Rhino Head and I can go ahead and let me undo this so I can get a hold of the Rhino Head easier. Click on it. And I could have taken the Rhino Head and I could have put a little more detail in that by bringing up the scaling right here. And then you can see I've got a little more detail, but I've got to validate that that doesn't exceed the 1 inch of the material. So we're going to put the dish back in here and I'm going to take a look at the overall size of the model by coming over here to the scale, and I've got plenty of room there. So then I'm going to turn around and recalculate it with that. Let me hit close here and take a look a little more. I just want just a touch more detail. So depending on the sensitivity of things, sometimes it's easier to turn off the other component. I can turn this around here now. And I can bring that up just a little tiny more. Let's turn the dish back on. Everything looks like it's still in there, except right here you can see that's out just a little bit above the carving plane, but that's okay. It will still carve. When I recalculate it, this will just be sticking up a little bit above the actual dish, and I'm okay with that. And I actually make it look like it sticks out a little bit more. Now, if I was in Aspire, there's some other things that I could do to play with this. And when I originally designed this dish, I was in Aspire, but I decided I wanted to show people that you could actually do this in vCarve. And so that's why I'm doing that now. So now what I want to do is, first of all, I'm going to come over here and delete this because I'm not going to have a cutout so I don't get confused. And I'm going to recalculate these toolpaths. Looking here, gap above the model, I'm going to put 0.02, which is what I usually like. And we've got plenty of material underneath the model. Hit OK. Hit recalculate yes. come back over here. I'm going to reset the preview. And I'm going to go ahead and preview the visible toolpath so we can see what it looks like since I made that model just a little bit deeper. So I think you can already see on the first ball nose that the actual carving is becoming more defined by having increased the scale of the Rhino. So we're just finishing the 1/4 inch ball nose finishing pass, and then we're going to move on to the 1/8 inch. All right, you can see, at least to me, that looks a lot better with the depth. And this is on preview on Canadian maple. I'm actually going to use walnut, but in reality, in my software, I haven't selected a good walnut that I like. So here's what the standard walnut looks like, and I don't think you get much from that. And then if I come up here to, let's see here, what's a couple other walnuts in here that I've got. Walnut vertical dark. This is more kind of like the walnut, but this, again, with the grain structure and stuff, I'm not going to have quite this grain structure, but it'll be similar. So that gives you an idea of various possibilities. So I was just looking up here to see if there was any kind of shading or anything else that I could use. Light follows viewer. I think that sometimes helps. Get a good look at it. I typically like to look at it under the standard Canadian maple, simply because the darker woods are harder to see, even though that might give you actually a better view of what the carving will look like in a dark wood. And it's usually better to do these 3T carvings in light wood if you have the opportunity. But I had that little walnut slab that I wanted to use. So that's how I'm going to set that up. Now you could take and you could put other kinds of frames and there's different alternatives. Your imagination is the only limitation. But I wanted to show you something that I actually did with this Rhino. And I put this in a dish in that slab. And that will be the next part of this video, is me showing you how that cuts and what that ends up looking like. For the rest of this video, I'm going to go over how I carved this actual model in that piece of walnut. I'm not going to necessarily explain it step by step, but I did record the process while I was doing that. The first step of the process required that I figure out how the model was actually going to go on the top of this board and whether it was the right dimensions. So I set up some vectors. I didn't show that in the video, but I set up some dimension vectors just to check out how far the Rhino was going to carve along with the dish to make sure that it would fit on here. And then you'll see the next step was to go in here and surface this board so that it was perfectly flat. You can see the cross mark right here where the center of the board is, so that I know where I'm starting. And that's what you're watching right now, is me just doing a dry run of where the carving is going to be to make sure that the carving will fit within the parameters of this walnut slab. All right, once I had that all set up, I went ahead and surfaced the board so it was nice and flat for my carving, and that's what you're going to be watching right now. All right, ready for the first roughing cut. This one's estimated to be about 55 minutes. Total carving is between 5 and 6 hours for this small Rhino head. This is what the carve looks like after the roughing pass. Starting to take shape. It'll take a lot more shape after the next pass, which will be the first finishing pass with a 1/4 inch ball nose. And the next step was the first finishing pass with a 1/4 inch ball nose. Took about 36-40 minutes. Well, I got the carve finished, and overall it looks pretty good. You can see a little tear out up there on the top. That was probably because of how close I placed the Rhino and the way the bits were going across there. It might have even happened during the roughing pass and I didn't notice it. But overall it turned out okay. I later took a little sanding wheel from my Dremel and I smoothed out that edge. You can see that initially the carving doesn't always pop. It will pop more if you have lighter wood and if you have deeper carvings. So that's something to think about. Now, the next thing I'll show you is the picture of the carving after I put some finish on it. I put some bumbleshoots all-in-one wood finish on it. And then I turned that into the San Diego Fine Woodworkers for them to put in their annual holiday gift sale. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope to touch a couple things and let you figure out some ways you might be able to use the Vista Sculpt software, or if not even using the Vista Sculpt software, if you have STLs, how you might put those in a model and carve them and have a nice 3D wall art or desk art, whatever it is. With that, I think this video has gone long in the tooth, so I will let you go. Until we meet in this medium again, thank you for your patience and let me know what you thought.